Hello everyone, this is Janice Hernandez, your LRTA State President. I hope you're all safe and well. We have certainly gone through some tumultuous times the past couple of weeks. Hurricane Ida has impacted many of our fall plans and has caused us to cancel our district meetings as well as our state fall meeting. I was really looking forward to meeting with our members again, even if it was through Zoom. But our members are going through a lot right now, especially in Southeast Louisiana. Some are still recovering from the storm or helping others to recover. And we want them to be able to focus on these efforts. I went to Lower Lafourche Parish to bring supplies to family, and seeing the devastation was heartbreaking. I know it will be a while before people there will be able to do much else. And to think that was just a portion of the area that was affected. In fact, almost half of our districts are in the affected areas. That's the one good thing about recording the district meeting presentation. Members will be able to watch whenever they have the time. All of the information in this video is very important. The next legislative session is right around the corner, and we need to prepare now. Our Executive Director, Rodney has worked hard to put this information together. Thank you to him and to the staff for preparing this video. Although we canceled the fall district meetings, some districts have rescheduled. Please keep an eye on your email and the LRTA website and Facebook page for updates. If your district reschedules, I hope you're able to attend these meetings to reconnect. I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you for taking the time to watch today's presentation. And please, stay safe, everyone.
Greetings from the Louisiana Retired Teachers Association. My name is Rodney Watson, and I'm the Executive Director for LRTA. We're all painfully aware of how plans change very quickly in Louisiana. First, we were dealing with a pandemic, and then Hurricane Ida. We had hoped to meet face-to-face at our district meetings this fall, but that quickly changed to Zoom meetings, and then after the hurricane, we realized we had to cancel all meetings. But we want you to know that we at LRTA have worked every day since the beginning of the pandemic on your behalf. At first, we had to work from home. Then we had a hybrid model where some people came in and some worked from home. And finally, we're all back together here at the office. And the work that we do is guided by our board. Every year, the executive board establishes what we call legislative priorities. And those guide our work habits here every day at the office. Legislators are working every year on what should a retirement plan look like. And does that change benefit, or is it a detriment to our members? And so we're working in advance of the session to protect your retirement benefits. The subject of today's meeting is to present to you the view or what I would have presented at the district meetings this fall. The things we're going to talk about today is what happened at the last legislative session. So a recap of that. And then this fall, we're going to have constitutional amendments that affect tax reform. Should you support those or should you oppose those? Also, what does the future sessions look like for next year? Can we anticipate other attacks to our retirement plan? And what about COLAs? We haven't given one in 5 years. Did you know that there are hurdles where we have to pay down the debt before we can award those to our retirees? And even then, we have to go to the legislature. We also work at the national level, in this case AARP, to look at some health bills. We're all aware, if you're on Medicare or Medicaid, the prices of drugs are extremely high. We pay more for drugs in this country than any other country in the world. And are there bills out there we should support in terms of drug reform laws? And then finally, what about those of you that qualify for Social Security benefit? Did you know Louisiana is one of 15 states? If you collect a public retirement and you paid into Social Security, that benefit is reduced. Are there any laws out there to change that? And how are we participating? So we invite you to stay tuned and watch each of these segments. The goal today is twofold. What are we doing in terms of legislative priorities through the state office? And what can you do from home to protect your retirement benefits? For those of you that are viewing the presentation this morning, all of the resources can be found at our website, lrta.net. Then click on Advocacy Center at the top of the page. Then click on Fall District Presentation. and there will be where you can download, or it'll take you to a link where you can print out or read all the resources from today's presentation. The second thing you need to do as we get ready for future legislative sessions is to register for VoterVoice. VoterVoice is a new platform that makes you, an advocate, more powerful, and it's a lot easier for you. So you'll go to LRTA.net, again, click on Advocacy Center at the top of the page, then click on Legislative Action Center. There's going to be a few things for you to fill out. Then when the time comes and we say contact your legislators, it'll take you straight to a link that you've already completed, and the message will be pre-populated for you, and all you have to do is click send, or you can add your own personal message. So we encourage all of our members to get ready now for both federal and state legislation by registering for VoterVoice. As we go through each segment for the district meetings today, you'll be able to find information about each of those on the LRTA website at the end of the presentation. We monitored several bills during the regular 2021 legislative session. Today I'm going to focus on two of those. The first one is Senate Bill 24 by Senator Price. Basically, this was a hardship COLA bill, and it provided a modest increase to those retirees whose benefit was below the national poverty line. We're going to talk a little bit more later in another segment about COLAs for more of our retirees. The second bill we monitored was Senate Bill 22 by Senator Peacock. Basically, this changed the mandatory retirement age. Most of our retirees followed a retirement plan where you could retire with full benefits at 62 years of age or less. Right now in Louisiana, you have to work until 62 to get your full benefit. This bill would have raised that mandatory age to 67, or at 62 you would have had to teach 40 years. Now, we know this would seriously affect recruitment and retention of teachers. We worked with the Louisiana Public School Coalition to successfully oppose this bill. And you might say, well, how does this affect retirees? Right now in Louisiana, we have a huge shortage of teachers. If this bill had passed, that shortage would increase. And if you look at the economics, the fewer teachers paying into the retirement plan, the weaker it is fiscally. So there are other reasons to oppose that bill as well. So these were the two that I wanted to share with you today. More information about the other bills, again, will be in that district packets. Our next section is on tax reform and constitutional amendments. A lot of retirees don't know that if you stay in Louisiana after you retire from a public pension, that your benefit is exempt from state income tax. We've worked hard to protect that over the years. That was challenged in 2016 when similar tax reform came before the voters, but we opposed it, and that is intact. But there are two constitutional amendments that constitute what we call good tax reform. Well, if your benefit is exempt from taxes, why would we support tax reform? Well, there's two reasons for that. First of all, our current tax structure is archaic and it creates unstable budgets. And by that I mean every year we might have a good tax year from sales tax, and there's plenty of money to fund government services. Another year with poor tax revenue, we have less funds to fund government. The new tax reform will provide stabilization. In other words, we can count on a certain amount of money to fund government. That's important to us because it funds education. The minimum foundation program is how we fund education from taxes. It's also used to pay the employer's share toward our retirement benefits and future retirement benefits. And it's also used to pay down the retirement debt. So we do support two constitutional amendments. One is Constitutional Amendment number 1, which is centralizing the sales tax revenue, which will bring more tax, or bigger tax base to state government. And the second one is reforming the state income tax provisions. Namely, it eliminates the federal tax deduction from state income tax, but it brackets the state income tax requirements. So essentially you lose a deduction, but you gain it back by paying less state taxes. And also it's where more people are paying their fair share of taxes. So we encourage you to support Constitutional Amendment number 1 and Constitutional Amendment number 2. Our next segment is on the legislative outlook for 2022. So what's on the horizon? I'd like to make 3 points. First of all, this is going to be a longer session. Every other year, the sessions are longer, which means legislators can introduce pretty much any type of bill they want to. Every other year is a fiscal year. That's what it was this year, so it was more limited, so we usually don't see the number of attacks that we normally see. So we're probably going to see another hybrid bill come before the legislature. And what I mean hybrid is currently you as a retiree have what we call a DB, or a defined benefit. In other words, you can predict the amount of your benefit based on the number of years of service, based on your average salary, and based on a certain accrual rate. Under the hybrid plans, it would only be a partial defined benefit, and then the rest would be a 401k. Well, there's no research, there's no place in the country that has done a hybrid yet that shows it produces enough of a benefit for teachers to retire. So we have opposed to these in the past, so we're going to keep an eye on that. So why do we see these bills cropping up, and why do we think there might be another one? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One reason is we've had legislators say they're going to bring them back. And the other reason is we have legislators that have been, their campaigns have been formed by a group called ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, and ALEC fundamentally does not like public pensions, specifically defined benefits. So we're going to keep an eye on that. State law says they have to pre-file that legislation before the session, so you want to stay tuned to that so that we can keep our members informed. The next point I want to talk about is COLAs. A COLA is a cost of living adjustment. The last time we saw COLA for the general retirement population was 2016. Where do COLAs come from? Well, did you know that when you were putting in your contributions as a teacher, you were funding your basic benefit? You didn't put any money in for COLAs. So where does it come from? Well, if you talk to a legislator, they're going to say the state's paying your COLA, but that's not true. No state funds go in for a COLA. The COLAs come from the excess earnings in our investment. In other words, after the retirement agency pays all of their obligations, in other words, all of our benefits, the administrative costs, the debt payment, if there's anything left over, we generally use that for a COLA. But guess what? They changed the law several years ago, and they said, well, before we can pay for a COLA, there are certain hurdles that you have to use that money for. In other words, part of that, $200 million, is used to make a debt payment. And then there's a second hurdle that's attached to that indexes the rest of that. But the good news is we had a banner year with investments. We haven't heard the valuation yet, but I'm pretty sure we're going to see nearly $300 million put into the experience account, which is used to pay the COLA, and that'll be enough to fund a general COLA. Now, the way the law is written now, the general COLA applies to anyone who's 60 years of age and has been retired for 1 year, which is a large part of our retirement population. And the other good news is the last COLA was 1.5%. This COLA is going to be 2% because our funding level is going to jump higher. All of that is good news. What's the not so good news? Even if we have the money in the account, the law says we have to go to the legislator and get it approved. And the legislators, no matter how much we talk to them, they think that that $300 million we're using is somehow state funds. It's not. So we have to educate them. This is where you come in. As soon as this presentation's over, you need to go to LRTA.net and register for VoterVoice. VoterVoice is a vehicle that will populate an email message to your legislator with the language that we need for them to convince them to vote for the COLA. The sooner you do that, the sooner you're going to be ready when that all call comes out this spring. So we're going to need all of our members. We're going to need all retirees to contact their legislators to convince them to vote for that. Now this is a very important step for us. We know our members are frustrated because we haven't received one. We're doing everything from our end to make sure that we find an author for that legislation. Once we have proof the money's there, then you're going to have to do your part. The letters, the phone calls, the conversation with legislators are still important, and we'll help you with language for that too. So to recap, we're going to be watching for hybrid plans coming this spring, and we're going to work really hard, provided funds are available, to provide a COLA to our members. And the third thing I wanted to talk about is LRTA does not work in isolation. We work very closely with the TRSL board, and we have 2 retirement reps on that board that are strongly affiliated with our organization, Dr. James Taylor and Dr. Jerry Beaudoin. Dr. Jerry Beaudoin has elected not to run for office again, but one of our members, our second state Vice President, Clyde Hamner, was elected, and he will assume that seat in January. Both of these members are very, very active in LRTA and will be very active on TRSL. We will use them as our voice when we go in and seek that COLA in the spring. So stay tuned. Our next segment is looking at the cost of drugs for older Americans. LRTA partners with other organizations occasionally on legislation that benefits our retirees. This year, we're working with AARP to look at how do we control the cost of medications. Did you know that the United States pays the highest cost for medications in the world? The lobbying drug companies have a monopoly on the prices of drugs, and the costs are prohibitive. During the last 5 years, if we just look at 3 tangents, the cost for cancer treatment, for diabetes, for asthma, the costs have gone up 69 to 70%. And a lot of those costs are passed on to the retiree or the Medicare person on Medicare through out-of-pocket expenses. So there is a bill that's going before Congress this year, and we're urging President Biden and Congress to pass a bill that would control for the cost. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to do it in 3 different ways. One thing in this bill is to allow Medicare to negotiate the prices of drugs. And the reason for this is if you worked in a small district as a teacher, versus a large district as a teacher, often your healthcare premiums were more from the small district or the small business than it is from the big business. That's because the more people that are on the plan, the more value you are to that drug provider, because they're going to sell more. So you're going to be able to negotiate a better deal. Well, if Medicare can do it, because of the millions of Americans on that plan, they'll be able to negotiate better prices on your behalf. And surveys show that Americans do support that type of caveat. The next change in this new law would be to cap the out-of-pocket expenses for your Part D. And for those of you that are on Medicare, know your Part D pays for your drugs. And right now, those of you, if there's a drug that's not listed on the plan, or if you have cancer, or diabetes, or asthma, or other things, they will only pay so much toward that drug, and the rest comes out of your pocket. We hear that from our members all the time. So capping the amount of out-of-pocket would save not only all money for the person on Medicare, but it would save Medicare, the provider, billions of dollars every year. That's not passed on to the consumer. And then the third caveat would be to provide financial penalties to the drug companies that raise the cost of drugs higher than the cost of living. So I just cited 69 to 70%. There's never been inflation like that ever in this country. But if inflation is 2%, and we limited the increase to 2%, then it would be more affordable. So we want you to know that at LRTA, we're looking at every caveat of retirement and the quality of life. We will work with the AARP, both the state and the federal level, to pass this legislation at the appropriate time as we see the bill come before Congress. We'll do email blast, we'll post on social media, we'll provide you language so you can contact your congressman to support the changes in this law. Our last section is looking at Social Security benefits. And you might say, well, I paid into a state retirement system. I don't qualify for Social Security. But many of our retirees do. Many of our retirees worked second jobs, worked a job before they came in the profession, worked a job after they retired. Louisiana is one of 15 states that is penalized for Social Security benefits. Basically what that means is, let's say that you put in enough quarters and enough money to make $1,200 a month in retirement. In Louisiana and in 14 other states, that benefit is reduced. Why is it reduced? Because in the 1980s, Congress passed a law that lowered the benefit to make Social Security more financially stable. Now, there's two provisions. One is the Windfall Elimination provision, the WEP, which reduces the benefit for the retiree. The other is the GPO, Government Pension Offset, which would essentially remove the benefit from a surviving spouse. Now, this is grossly unfair. We've battled this for years. The good news is we've seen legislation over the last 3 to 4 years. It hasn't really gone anywhere or done anything. It's an uphill battle because it's going to cost the federal government almost $300 million to remove that provision and provide us with our benefit. But we're fighting the battle. This year, there are 3 bills going before Congress. There's H.R. 82 by Representative Davis that would fully repeal it. And then there is Senate 1302 by a congressman from Ohio, Congressman Brown, that would fully repeal both of those provisions, and we're supporting that. There's also H.R. 2337 would partially repeal it. We're going to support both. We're going to come at it from every angle. LRTA is working to get support from that. All of our congressional delegation have signed on to the full repeal. We've contacted them. They responded to our survey and say they are going to be co-sponsors and support the repeal. We've done Zoom calls with Representative Grays and Representative Letko. I've had several conversations with Representative Mike Johnson and have actually a meeting with him this week to discuss a delegation going to Washington in November when the bill might come before Congress, and just hit them at it from every angle. So we want you to know we may have been unsuccessful in the past, but we're not giving up the fight. We're more active than we ever have been. Again, you want to stay tuned. You want to be registered for VoterVoice, because when the appropriate time comes, and this goes before Congress, you may not be able to go to Washington, but you can contact your legislators and we can give you all the language and populate it in that email for you to make it a lot easier. So as we conclude today's presentation, please be reminded to go to LRTA.net, click on Advocacy Center, click on Fall District Presentation so that you can download or read the handouts from today. Also, register for VoterVoice. Again, go to LRTA.net. Click on Advocacy Center, then click on Legislative Action Center. Please register today.